Exactly. So, good morning. Hi, Jake. It's so good to see you. Um, I was happy to be at your wedding a few weeks ago, and thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us about your experience at the Great Connections.
Yeah,
So,
thanks for coming. It was a blast, and it was really good to see you in person after I
yeah,
think it's been a good couple of years, 5 or 6 years or so, maybe a
yeah,
little longer even. But we
exactly.
really appreciate you coming, and thanks for having me.
Exactly. So tell me about yourself now. What are you doing now?
So I'm an analyst for I'll say a leading bank. We specialize in deposit fraud, fraud rings, kiting, and a handful of identity theft, impersonation type of fraud, and even some like money laundering. I have a come in a dual role unofficially as a consultant for my line of business. We manage various aspects of like the technology infrastructure from just like basic IT for our agents to even developing, testing, and distributing new code to align with like the changes in our regulation, controls, procedures, all sorts of stuff like that. Currently, I'm working on a relatively massive software release that's going to replace our current system that we basically fully operate within.
And Jake, when you say you're an analyst, what does that mean in terms of the kind of work
It's
you do?
Yeah, it's tough to say. There's not really an easy like one size fits all answer. It is a term that's commonly used in banking, where you go from representative to leads to associates to managers. So that associate analyst role is just that it's more of a placement than it means that I'm specifically doing a type of work. I would call it like an assistant general manager of a team. I'm still, I mean, I personally say I'm pretty low on the totem pole. I am, for the most part, just working with my frontline agents. I've got a team of about 14 people, and those can be external hires, which the higher up you go, the less likely you're going to have internal. You're hiring internal candidates only. So I'm still working with kind of the entry level positions as my employees.
And what do they do for you?
They're the ones doing all of the fraud detection. I'm managing the team. I'm cleaning up their cases. I'm moving their cases that they work to closure through that process because we're closing accounts essentially. We are detecting fraud and taking action on those. So I facilitate that movement and I deal with all the money where it goes.
And how old are you now?
I'm 33. Turning 33 in 6 months. I'm 32. I can't ever remember anymore.
Okay. And did you end up going to college?
Not after the Great Connections. I was in college for a couple semesters before I went. Actually, so because I had two different experiences, I did one when I was in very early middle, like in the middle of my high school. I was like 16 was when I first came, and then I came again when I was 24 or so. So I did a couple of semesters in between. Ended up really not liking it, and as much as I wish I'd done something more there, I ended up not committing to it and
So,
doing my own thing.
so you got this position, you got into this position without going to college.
Correct. The A big aspect of that was because it was about a year and a half after my last year of the first half of Great Connections that I did get a job as a teller at the bank, same bank, and they were hiring tellers. This is 2011 or so. They were hiring tellers without college education. It was very common after that crisis, and that set me up really well for where I am now because I was in person handling the checks and had all of this experience and rapport with that function of the bank that I could come in and say, well, I know what a check should look like. I know what it looks like when someone's doing fraud. It really just feels like common sense to me because I had all that experience, and so they were able to move me into this. But yeah, like I was saying, that entry level position that like the agents on my team are, they can get in without a college degree, and as I move up, it's definitely more and more. I think more and more it's not as important, so to speak. Like it's not going to be a resume killer or an interview killer or anything, but yeah, the higher up you move, the more they're going to be asking that question still.
But I mean, it sounds pretty great that you were able to get to this position without a college degree, given that as a credential in so many jobs these days.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thankful for that, and I'm aware it's limiting, and like I said briefly, I do wish I'd committed, and I think the door is always open, especially with all the online things these days. Um, but uh, but I do I do think it's limiting, and having something to my name would be nice and helpful.
It's interesting. I just heard a business a show this morning report that two-thirds of people polling are against getting college degrees now. They think it's not worth the money. I thought that was interesting. Two-thirds.
I as much as I'm saying I wish I had done it, I'm not I don't want to do it. I still don't necessarily want to go out of my way and spend all that time just
And
because,
money.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Spend time and money for a piece of paper that says, yeah, I mean, for something that I know I can do now.
exactly.
At the end of the day, if that's what the employer wants, you
Yeah.
know, that's the
Well,
negotiation.
usually they hardly even look at stuff like that anymore. So tell me about your experience of the Great Connections. You came first in 2009 for the first program that we had, and tell me about and why did you end up coming? What got you to come?
A lot of that comes from my mom. My mom and you, I believe, had a relationship, and you
Yeah, we're friends.
told her about it. My mom had already been taking me on several expeditions. She had gotten a taste of life, I guess I would call it, after her diagnosis, and so she took us on cruises that were sponsored by Lindblad, National Geographic. She sent me to Outward Bound the year before, where I did a 22-day Outward Bound experience, which I also can't recommend enough.
Mhm.
I was reluctant on a lot of these things. Maybe apprehensive is a better word. A lot of nervousness and a little bit of fear. Um, but she sent me on these. She'd asked me. She'd introduced the idea to me, asked me if I was interested, and tell her that she'd handle it and sign me up if I was. And um, for like Outward Bound, I remember saying yes and like kind of immediately regretting it that before I had gone on it because I'm like, what did I just sign up for? And I don't know if it was the way she asked it or just my personality or what, but I almost felt like I didn't want to say no. Um, but your program, I think, sounded a lot more interesting to me from just hearing about it than Outward Bound did. Outward Bound was like, wait, what did I just 22 days and I don't get to like there's no toilet or shower or like wait a second. Um so it was also a different experience. Outward Bound is a level of freedom, I think. And your program sounded like college. I mean, it was like, oh, you're gonna have a dorm room, you're gonna be in the city by yourself. It's my first experience like that. And at the end of the day, uh, that experience of that kind of freedom of living like a college student as a 16-year-old gave me a huge amount of like self reliance, self responsibility, and confidence that hadn't gotten fully from Outward Bound, which I think I attribute Outward Bound for a ton of things like that as well.
Mhm.
But there's like a communal aspect of Outward Bound, and there's a huge individual aspect of the Great Connections that I valued. And I think I got some amazing experiences over those couple of years.
Mhm.
Um, and I came back again in 2010 immediately thereafter, and I think I had a three times better experience as the 17-year-old. And that there's a lot of that I think attributed to like, how I took my life outside of high school.
So you came back to
Uh,
the Great Connections for right away the next year.
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe 2010. I
Yes.
came back for the second year, and
I just
then
wanted to be clear it wasn't Outward Bound. Yeah.
no. I did Outward Bound once, and it would be as much as I loved it, I would be very hard pressed to sign up and do it again. It's a terror. I mean, it's relatively terrifying, whereas I don't think I had the same experience at the Great Connections.
So yeah.
And then we came back again in 2016 and 17.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yes. Yeah. And when you say the Great Connections is more individual, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so I mean, and it might have been more how I took it. I'm there with a lot of people, but I was more focused on myself and my development and taking care of that in the sense that um, I was facilitating what I wanted in the sense like if I wanted to say something in the conversation, then I had to speak up. Um, Outward Bound, just as a comparison, like it was, we're not getting there unless we all get there. Um, Whereas if I had a question of the text, the only way I'm going to resolve it is if I ask a question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I wanted to bring up a point, I had to bring up that point because I can't trust that everybody is going to have the same questions about a text as I did.
Hmm.
Outward Bound, we have a destination. It's the top of a mountain. If, as much as I think, and, if I can't make it, then the group is going to support me. And if somebody else can't make it, then I'm going to be supporting that person to get there. And there's an aspect of that, I think, in the Great Connections as well, but you do rely on that person speaking up if they're struggling. Um, and, uh, and I think part of the reason I'm saying that is because I had learned that to some degree from Outward Bound when I didn't learn an individualist aspect in Outward Bound. So when I came to Great Connections, I kind of had a goal of learning more about myself.
Hmm. So in the Great Connections, in the discussions and even outside of the discussions, people would help each other understand things. But if you didn't ask any questions, or you didn't indicate what you didn't understand or what you wanted to know, you weren't going to get answers.
Right. I wrote a little bit about this, separately, but there's there was like the first 3 or 4 days, maybe even longer of the first trip that I was there in 2009, where I don't think I spoke. Um, and it took until like the fourth day when I was watching and sitting quietly before I started speaking up and realizing like, no, I do have an opinion about that. And I'm tracking the conversation fully and I have something to say. And I started speaking up and that really changed the entire experience for me.
Mm.
Um, you don't go around the room asking every person one by one, do you have a question? Do you have a question? Do you have a question? It is a relatively free-flowing discussion. So if you want to bring something up, you have to speak up. And I remember I also like a little besides the point, but I remember I took that as a partial responsibility in my later years, trying to encourage people to speak up because I could, you can tell when somebody is like a little maybe antsy. Um, you can kind of tell when somebody has something to speak up, and as much as we don't, go and like interrupt the discussion to say, "Hey, what do you have on your mind?" I can see you fidgeting. That there is an encouragement I think that can be given, and we may speak about this more, but like, when I would gather, I would meet outside of the seminars late at night in like the social room in the dorm. Um, a lot of what I was focused on is like giving people the confidence, like there really are no rules. Just, if you feel like something, you got to speak up. You got to say it. And you got to say it loudly. You got to say it confident. Like you got to speak up. And and I don't know how successful I was in that in any degree, but I know that that was kind of what helped me, especially in that first year,
Mhm.
was socializing with people got me more comfortable to speak with them. And
Mm.
when you're in a class environment, at some point, I just feel like I don't know these people. I don't know how they're going to respond to certain things. And I was a little bit more hesitant. And then after a couple of nights and days, I think I warmed up to people, and I think that was an important aspect as well.
So the in-person aspect was important in making it work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my answers to that, earlier question where I was saying the in the like the dorm kind of setting that made me feel like a college student. Um, that was that was such a major player in my experience. Being able to, you know, kind of go out in the city with you guys as a group or with smaller groups and make friends there. All of that, including being in person in the classrooms and, having dinner and doing social things separate from the seminars in person. Every aspect of that contributed to I think the success of or my success in the Great Connections.
Mhm. Mhm. So you said a little bit about what you spent your time with, uh, let's see, outside of the seminar, because I was asking you how you experienced it. What are some of the unscheduled things that you did? You went to dinner with other participants.
Yeah, your first, oh, I don't know if you cut off or um like your first night at the Great Connections, I think it was every year. You would get, you'd order in pizza. Maybe that was for lunch though. But, I remember there was a couple years we did pizza together. This was more orchestrated by you, and then you walked us around the city. Each year we talked about architecture. We had seminars, just entire, hour and a half discussions of readings outside in a local park. Um, but later at night after things had kind of wrapped, not so much. I don't think the first year I remember sitting in dorm rooms and we had extended conversations um, regarding the text and not regarding the text that we had talked about that day or earlier that week. The second year, I remember I was a little bit more social. And you had some local Chicagoans. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Um, that came to the seminar, so they had friends that swung by, and we'd hang out with them. I remember taking a walk late at night. There was probably like six or seven of us, and it probably wasn't that late, and probably like 11 to midnight, but it was still a little rough. I think there was a curfew in effect, and I'm glad we had as many people as we did. Um, but we took a walk up to Millennium Park. We were like 2 blocks away. Went through Millennium Park, just like one quick loop, maybe 30-minute walk, and came back. Um, there were things like that. But then outside of that, we would mostly stay in that dorm room and talk. Or not so much a dorm room. That second year we had a more social shared space that we could use,
Mhm.
and that's where we'd sit and you know ponder.
So did you find it intellectually challenging?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really hard to describe that feeling. Like when I was younger, When I was in high school, especially, I was focused on math and engineering, and um, everything that challenged me came from learning calculus. That was what I knew to be challenging. Coming to the Great Connections, I found a totally different type of challenge, type of thinking that I wasn't used to. And um, that really changed my perspective on a lot of things. Just it gave me confidence in myself and how I was able to process new concepts or see from other people's perspectives in a way that I had not had to, like, that wasn't a muscle that I had to exercise
Mhm.
previously.
Because you
Um,
didn't usually talk to other people that much about calculus or engineering.
well, there's only one answer with calculus. I always found, and as difficult as calculus is, in my opinion, once you get the answer, you've gotten the answer. Once anybody gets the answer, they have the answer. Whereas when you're reading a book and you're just saying, "Oh, I didn't even realize you could interpret those things in two different ways."
What kind of
Um,
book are you talking about then? Not
you're like the not a calculus textbook, but like like when you read Aristotle, this is the first time I was reading Aristotle or Socrates' writings, and I mean, kind of like the Bible, you can read a single verse and interpret 17 meanings from it if you tried, or depending on who you spoke to. And I think that was new to me, just entirely. And so there was a lot to learn there. And there was a lot of challenge for me because I was so used to a concrete, direct approach to everything that I had to open up and say, oh, this is someone's looking at this in a completely different way. And I need to, in order to even participate in this discussion, I have to make an effort to see their perspective of how they're seeing it. And so I have to ask them questions about something that I thought I understood. But and I think there were other aspects where I would, in my earlier time at the Great Connections, I would kind of just be trying to speak about my perspective
Mhm.
and not even trying to understand what other people were. I was like, well, no, no, you're wrong, which was, not really the correct approach after um, in foresight, but hindsight. But the that ability to, like, I always talk about that Adler's coming to terms,
Mhm.
which I think you use most of the years I came there. It's always an interesting conversation because it really is just that, is, in order for us to have a conversation, we just at least need to acknowledge, what our interpretations of the text is, and how we can come to terms with each other and the text.
Mhm. So you're talking about getting to know that other people can approach the same material differently, and how do you get to the point where you understand each other and maybe even arrive at a new position, right? That because you learned from each other about it.
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I don't think I could say it much better myself. I uh, have a tendency to ramble a little bit about those things, but the interpretation of what somebody else is trying to get, that viewpoint from somebody else's perspective, was not something that I had ever,
Mhm.
you know, done. I feel like in any regard, I was a very self-centered person, and I think there was a lot of making myself do that in order to facilitate a good conversation. Like, it's not just about how I interpret something, that I need to make sure that I understand in order to even have an argument, you need to fully understand the other person's
Mhm.
position.
Mhm.
Um, so go out of your way to understand what they're saying.
Mhm. So in that respect, it's affected your life since then, and t tell me more about that. How's it affected your life and your work?
Yeah, that's that's been a huge aspect. I think, I think it clicked something in me that started down that road. I would return back to my normal life after summer and have that in the back of my mind, and I'd be, it would be there and ever present, and then I would, I immediately got a job when I came back, essentially, the second year, and I kind of felt like I lost it a little bit, returning back to normal life. And, I was working either as a teller or I worked in fast food before I was a teller. And it kind of disappeared for a while. And I had to, come back to it as I got older and as I was maturing, because I was not very mature back then. Um, but that they, as like now in the days that since and when I went to work after being a teller, I went to become a become I went and worked at a restaurant brewery. Um, and I was in a pretty rough period of my life, but I remember, like, as I started there, I would train people as they came in, and I like realized I was really bad at training people. I
Mm.
would basically just tell them exactly how they should do it because I've done everything and I know exactly how to do everything the best way and blah blah blah. And like nobody wants to be trained that way. Well, most people don't want to be trained that way. Um, as much as I can appreciate, a person who has, you know, potentially superior understanding of a process, um, a trainer should be focused on what their trainee needs and style of learning that the trainee needs, and to try to see things from the trainee's perspective, and have an open discussion with the trainee when you're doing something, and say, do you understand, like how would you do this? Um, and that came to me slowly but surely back after because I went to the Great Connections again 2016 and 2017, and that was when I was working.
Mhm.
And I kind of remember coming back from the Great Connections and having like a newfound, my second bout at the Great Connections, and having like oh, this is why people are always frustrated with me. I'm failing to take those aspects that I learned in the Great Connections that helped me so much in the Great Connections and I'm failing to apply them effectively in my
Mhm.
life. And once I started doing that, that's kind of, ultimately, and I'll take a couple of steps ahead in the story, but ultimately, I think that's where, my success in my current job comes in, where I'm able to, manage my team more effectively and coach them more effectively, and have a strong team that's, you know, beating expectations for our goals and whatnot.
Well, you have a lot of people working for you now, 14. That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I need to see my spreadsheets. I don't, yeah, there's a good number of people. They all require something different. Every single one, every single person has an
Mhm.
individual need, that, um, that needs to be addressed when you're speaking with them, is how they learn, how they, where their shortcomings are, for, where their errors and regulatory issues are
Mhm.
that they're facing. Um, Keeping up with all of it is a lot for me. It's not my best memory, and like, so the so this oof, I don't know how to say that. There's a social aspect that, like, I don't know if I would ever be the teacher who could come in with, 20 new students every single class and remember everyone's names.
Mm.
Um, but uh, but yeah, it's there. Being able to do it in the moment, I think is really what I got the most out of the Great Connections, is to say, okay, well, we're talking about this thing. I'm talking with this person. Let me talk to you and figure out what you need in order to come to terms with, what I'm trying to coach you or teach you about.
Mhm. Cool. And we did have some work in the classes on reasoning and logic. Did that help you at all, or was that valuable to you in your work or later on? You know, I think
There's,
we talked about logical fallacies, for example, and we did some
yeah,
games about that.
yeah. So I did debate classes when I was young. I was pretty familiar with it. I think there was an aspect of the where I might not have learned as much from those classes, but I was able to use those as opportunities to say, well, I have a very good understanding of what my opinions are on this matter. And now I can focus on what everybody else is talking about. And instead of just trying to say, this is my interpretation and I'm right, I can use those conversations to kind of elevate my experience here into, okay, well, let's help this conversation. Let's see where we can, like, oh, I hear what this person's saying. I hear what this person's saying. How do I get those two people to come to terms with each other rather
Mm,
than trying to put my perspective in? And I
mm,
think that those sessions were almost the most beneficial to me because of what I'm saying, what I, took out of the Great
mhm,
Connections was less than a, oh, what do I learn about logic, but more so, how do I get, how do I see this from somebody else's
mhm,
perspective and help them along the way to understanding?
mhm, mhm. And what would you say sets this seminar apart from others? It sounds like you've been to a number of workshops and experiences.
Um, there's so a lot of it, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is going to be me like comparing it to something like Outward Bound. Outward Bound is strict and you know planned out every minute. You're going to be exhausted. You're just going to bed immediately after setting up camp because you need your sleep. So there's the combination of a little bit more of a um, open-endedness of the Great Connections, where you have your basic college schedule, your day of classes. Then after six or so, it's up to you with how you're going to spend your evening. And most people are going to socialize. And there's I think there's always opportunity outside of that to. I think you would organize a lot of things. Say, hey, this is unofficial, but we're going to go do dinner. Um, but to that degree, I mean, like there's almost a Montessori kind of aspect of it where, it's whatever you want to do with your free time and however you want to approach the even the seminars, like however much you want to speak, it's your responsibility to say that out loud, which I think that's always been the main difference. If I went on we did a National Geographic expedition to like the Galapagos, and I mean it's every minute of every day is just calculated basically.
Mm,
Outside of like, oh, I mean, otherwise you're just sitting on the ship. You can go read a book by the deck or something. Um, you know, Otherwise you'd wake up at 9. We've got to walk at 9 around an island, and then we're gonna go through this small town, and then we're gonna get back on board and have lunch while the ship sails to another aspect, and we do another Zodiac cruise and this, that, or the other. And it's just this is what we're doing. Um, Great Connections just, as much as we had that 9 to 5 schedule of these are the classes we're doing and these are the books that we're touching on and the text and the excerpts that we're reading, how you read those, when you read those, which sometimes for me it was 7 o'clock in the morning before the 9 a.m. And I'd read the text and try to get my understanding of it right before class, and then I don't know if class is the right word, but it was very up to me and how I handled that and how I you know experienced the trip. So for me, it was. I guess I keep wanting to use the word responsibility, but
Mhm.
it's a little bit more than that. It's, just it was a level of maturity to be able to or even trust that, you give your students to be able to take their own education into their own hands in a like a it's like it's like college Montessori in my if there's a way to relate
So,
it to that.
so did you go to Montessori school, Jake?
I did a Montessori school when I was probably three or three. That was all essentially.
I was just wondering if if you had a personal experience that you were comparing it to.
I remember it, which is almost strange because it's
Huh.
easily one of my earliest memories. I remember, but it was preschool
Hmm.
type Montessori, so that's been my only experience. I've never seen. I couldn't easily recall when I'm sure my parents have taken me to Montessori schools, not like actually enrolled me, but just to see if it would be something that I liked. But the only one that I actually attended was like a
Hmm.
preschool variant. So I'm not super confident in if I'm using the term
No, I was just curious
as
because
accurately.
no, I was just curious if you were when you said that our classes were Montessori like if it was you were drawing from your own experience. So yeah.
Yeah, I say that just because it was, as much as, this is the book where this is the text we're reading from 9 to 10:30. This is the one we're discussing. It does come down to like kind of what I was saying is like, how do I want to approach this conversation? What is my understanding? What do I want to get out of this conversation and being responsible for my own um participation.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, because what I mean, what you said was absolutely about it being Montessori like was absolutely accurate. So I was just wondering if you'd taken it from your experience. Um, how does it compare to other schools that you've been to?
It's extremely different. I mean, I went all over for my schooling. It was, I mean, near disaster level of experience, in my opinion. I went to public schools, to private schools, charter schools, specialized schools for the arts, and homeschool. Um, and I would bounce around almost every year. I would say there's a lot of aspects, and I think it depends on the people, and I think public schools don't really give you as much of an option of the people you're going to be in class with. They're not very well, I won't criticize um other people randomly, but they won't give you the same kind of experience that you might have from, I know I had better experiences at I'm sorry, at private, at charter schools, at the arts school that I went to. But there was no place that I was able to make friends with in let alone a week, but in a single, like on the first night or the first 2 nights at the Great Connections, and I already felt like I knew people better than I'd ever known any of my classmates in a especially public school, but even in some of the nicer schools, I think, or nicer school experiences that I had.
Mhm.
So just spending that time with people um and I think getting into those conversations helps. I think the way school has just a lecturer in front of you telling you what to think or what to believe or what this class is about and what you're going to get out of it um, means that you don't ever actually like look to your left and your right and have that conversation with your fellow students, which means you never actually get to know them. And you can spend an entire year sitting next to somebody and never get anything from them, and I think, what they have to say on the subject, depending on what you're learning, um, can be some of the best, parts of your education. And opening that up opening those conversations up, I maybe had a teacher or two in all of the years and all of the schools I went to that could entertain that kind of conversation with each other. And it would be more of like well, today we're going to do this exercise and not like a consistent experience, which, I think I found that to be the most valuable aspect of my experience. Um, and something that's just completely lacking from almost any, modern schooling system.
So is there anything else you'd like to add to or any other thoughts you had that you'd like to add?
Um, I would just say that, just always ask questions. I don't know. I guess, if you're considering coming to the Great Connections, just do it. Ask questions, talk to Marsha. She'll answer all of what you're wondering. I would just make sure that you speak up for yourself and don't be afraid and jump in. I mean, everything that I've ever done has always been anxiety that, has kind of held me back, or a little bit of fear that held me back. And the more that I jump into something and commit, the more I realize that I get the best experience that I can. Um, and the more I speak up for myself and the more I, you know, s- struggling with the words, but the more I take my own responsibility, I keep using that word incorrectly.
Must be important.
Yeah. The more I, when I'm trying to figure out, I don't know why I'm struggling with the word. The more I, no, I can't come up with the words. The more I hold my own education as paramount in my own mind, um, the better experience that I have. And doing something like, and I still, that's not the way I want to say it, but doing something like committing to going out and taking that responsibility, in my own hands has been, what I would recommend for everybody.
So if somebody was sitting on the fence, you'd tell them about coming to the Great Connections. You would tell them what?
I mean, yeah, just that, you don't don't be afraid to ask your questions. Don't juggle a decision in your head. Just say what you're conflicted about out loud. And I would say if you have a um if you have something about if you have a thought in your head that you're like, oh, on the fence about it, and you're like, oh, I think I could see benefits here, um then I think that if you kind of already have your answer about whether you should come. That being on the fence about something, if you're not fully committed to something, then going to the Great Connections is going to be something that really helps you make those decisions. Um, and I mean, I think people who are already considering it have their biggest reason that they should come.
Thank you. Thanks. That's great. Thanks very much. Um, Before I stop, I'd like to ask you, is there any question I should have asked you that I haven't that you'd like me to ask you?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. No,
All right.
I don't have I think what I'll probably do is I'll compile a little bit of what I've written on the side and send it to you. And if you want to um take that away and maybe we can talk again if there's something that we didn't touch on enough, but that I could talk for hours about, my personal experiences that I had outside of the structured, 9 to 5 and the train rides to the later years that I went with the breweries and the socializing with people and, experiencing the city on my own. And, like I've even had crushes and fleeting 7 day, almost flings with people and all those kinds of things that I think might be a different conversation to have. But just the amount that I feel like I grew up in that in a 7 day period was always it's unforgettable, I guess.
Hmm. Fascinating. So every time you came, you felt like you grew up more in every 7 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember having like 2016 was the big one. I think was when we did Reason and Love.
Mm,
And that's my third time coming and the weight of just emotion that hit me in the middle of that and just like the third or fourth day,
mm,
something just absolutely clicked and um it's just so hard to even like talk about because I don't know where it came from or what really triggered it. But hearing everybody else's like opinions on love, and then all of a sudden it was like I understood what
mm.
love meant. And it was something I'd struggled with like my entire childhood. And it's yeah, every single year there was some moment like that that would happen. Some massive core development of mine that I think, easily contributed to who I am today.
Wow. Thank you for
Yeah.
telling me.
Thank you. Thank you for
For telling me.
bringing me in.
Yeah.
Um,
Go
I
ahead.
would,
What were you going to say?
I, I would, I wish I came more often. I wish I lived in Chicago and make it easier to pop in all the time.
Well, the next time we do something for that includes, older people now, you'll have to come.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for your time.